the city to come up and give us a different handle here on shopping locally. Rebecca?
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Fotu. I'm the Environmental Programs Coordinator for the City of Morgan Hill. And I've been with the city for about a year and a half. And I have to say, I am really pleased with the turnout. I'm going to have the Toastmasters organize all of my community meetings from now on, because we do have a lot of environmental forums where the public can come in and participate and give us feedback. And one of the main things that we've been working on for, well, since I began working for the city, is climate change. And that's the new sexy topic in our political world, in science, and we discovered that it's no longer a debatable issue, that it's a real issue that we need to address. Because basically everything we do in our life has some kind of environmental impact. Everything from turning on the water, to flipping on the lights, to the things that we also buy. And so shopping locally is really important. And I'd also like to mention too, tomorrow's Earth Day. And so this couldn't be more timely. Although Morgan Hill celebrates Earth Day on Thursday. So, in this time tomorrow, you can go down to the community center on Thursday and you'll see all the art and science fair projects from kids through K through 12. So that should be really interesting. And also a few other things that happened this week. For example, we've had record temperatures this past week. We've had, I think it was 98 today. Last week it was 90 degrees, which is completely unusual for this area during this time in April. And we've actually started spare the air alerts. We usually start those in May, and we've started them a whole month earlier. So we can definitely see a lot of our energy-consuming activities are affecting our environment. And just to kind of give you a background to why we care about climate change is, if you look at natural laws that nothing's created or destroyed, we can't take resources from underneath the ground and burn them on the Earth's surface and expect them to disappear. So they do linger around. And carbon dioxide has been singled out as the greenhouse gas that is the be-all, end-all of what's going on with our climate. And that's because everything we do has to do with carbon dioxide. When we burn fuel, when we turn on a light, some kind of fuel is being burned producing carbon. And carbon molecules actually last in the atmosphere 50 to 500 years. So that means if you drove your car here today, that those carbon emissions that were emitted from your vehicle are going to be around when your grandchildren are born. So that's something to really think about how we're impacting our future generations. So I'd like to kind of show you what we've been doing in the city. We've measured the community's carbon footprint. And we did it in 2005. And what we did was we collected information. I know this pie chart's really small, and I'll explain it. But from 2005, we gathered data of how many vehicle miles are traveled on our roads. We got PG&E data from all households and all businesses. Of course, they didn't tell us which ones are using more energy or not, because that's private. But they did give us a lump sum number, and we looked at our waste emissions. And so in 2005, we emitted 300,000 tons of carbon as a community. And so that's our impact. That's this community's impact in the world, in the global perspective. And so this yellow portion here represents 64% of our emissions come from transportation. And this blue here is electricity, this kind of reddish pink is natural gas, and this small sliver is waste. And that's not to say that waste isn't important, that recycling is not important. It's just that all these other activities that we're doing are so great that it kind of singles out waste and makes it smaller. And when you think about residential households and commercial businesses, they take a pretty even chunk between electricity and commercial. And so what we've been trying to do as a community is basically reduce our emissions. So I'm not sure if you've heard, but Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2006, he signed a bill, and it was a goal to reduce our emissions to 1990 levels. And so that basically means reducing it to when our population was 1990, because emissions kind of grow with population. And so this blue line for Morgan Hill indicates what our emissions will be if we don't do anything. If this community doesn't take any action, it'll just continue to grow. And this is where we want to be. So we need to reduce half of our emissions by 2020 in order to meet the goals of the state. And then by 2050, we need to reduce it 80% below 1990. And that's really aggressive. And you're thinking, how do we get there? Well, it's really easy. There's a few things that we do at the city. And one of them is promoting buying local. And when we think of local, we think of, making things locally, using local services. And as Jim mentioned, we really want people to travel shorter distances. And that's one of the beautiful things about buying local. I can since I live in town, I could ride my bike to go eat lunch somewhere or to go to the reserve. So there's a lot of ways for us why that's environmentally friendly. And just to give you an example, like a bottle of wine from Australia, Franz is in the audience, so he's going to be picked on today. A bottle of wine from Australia can it produces about 1,000 pounds of carbon dioxide versus a wine that's made locally, which emits little because it's not traveling a far distance, it's not having to fly across an ocean. And so that's one of the things we'd like to keep in perspective as well. And so when we think about shopping locally, I like to say, buy locally, think globally, because that's what we're doing. So we want to use local resources, we want to use local products, and we want to bike or walk to those places to where we get those. And that will all help reduce our carbon footprint. And as you'll notice on the carbon footprint, there's things that I couldn't measure. Like I can't measure, whether you buy your food from Mexico or whether you're buying it from a local farm in Morgan Hill or around this area. But those are things that you can consider maybe in your life and how you can reduce your impact and help us achieve our community goals. So buy locally, think globally.
When I came to Morgan Hill many, many years ago, it wasn't really a self-contained community. There were lots and lots of things you couldn't get here. You had to go out of town. There was one place in town you could buy men's underwear. There's no place in town you could buy your towels and washcloths. And today, it's pretty much a self-contained community. Everything you need, everything you want to purchase, you can buy locally. You can get it here. And Rebecca didn't really mention the farmer's market, but that is really a great resource for our local groceries and that sort of thing. I was going to ask Jim to come up and tell us a little bit more about the big box stores. You want to do that, Jim?
I will. Gosh, we've been bashing big box stores and large corporations and things like that, but, I'm a small business owner, and I hope one day I'm a large corporation. I mean, that would be good. But I still want to participate in the community. And that's the wonderful thing about this concept of buying local. It's not all about bad versus good. It's about good versus better. Brad is the one that introduced me to this concept, and that's why in his flyer that he created, he used a target. And what he said was, think of the center of the target as your local independent business, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. But when you're going out, and you have to decide what you want to buy, if you can't find what you need at a local independent business, all right, stay local, but maybe go to a chain. Or stay local and go to a big box store. Because as long as you're local, in some way, you're giving back to the community. And so we can all encourage growth. But if you focus on the concept of this target, and when you're making your buying decisions, think about the center. And if you can't meet your needs there, only then do you need to move out.
Well, I have a question to you. Does all this mean that if I just change my shopping habits, not only am I going to change my community, but I've changed the world?
Yes, you can. You heard that one before? Yes, you can. Yes,